On a sidebar note, I also remember my aunt going to church. My aunt came from a family where my grandmother was very big in the church, and so she was a pillar of the community and a matriarch in the church, and she was sort of, like I said, the glue that held the family together up at Rock Hall. And my Aunt Barbara and several of her siblings continued to go to church. And I remember at the time, Auntie Barbara would always go to church, and especially sometime during the week, sometime on Sundays. And I remember that we would sit into church forever. Like we were in church for like hours, like all day, like 8 hours plus in church. And I used to think, I'm like, how much is enough church? Didn't God talk to you already? I mean, for 8 hours you're there, and it was just long days. And sometimes they'd feed us, but it was scant food at the time there. It was just not a fun memory I remember of that time. But I remember this guy that showed up in Jamaica, and for the sake of legal purposes, I'll not mention his name, but I do remember him showing up, and he was a big shot from the United States, and he had a PhD, and he was this well-known bishop that came from the United States, and he was supposed to be healing people. And I remember him showing up, and actually one of the first things I remember is him asking for collection to build a church in Jamaica. And I remember he had people in the church, volunteer and making promises, for, how much money they were going to donate to the church. And I remember Auntie Barbara actually, promising $800 at the time, which is the total amount of her paycheck that she got paid for the month, because teachers got paid monthly. And I remember that this guy, she gave the money to the church, and I just couldn't understand, why would somebody give all of their money, every dime that they made, to the church? But that's my Aunt Barbara really was a very religious woman, and she continued to remain very religious. And I remember that we went to, Auntie Barbara was very, very excited, and she was like, oh, we're gonna go see the Reverend, and he's having this big, missionary or whatever, I can't remember the term, revival, I think it was. And when they got there, she says, oh, there's gonna be a lot of healing that's gonna happen, a lot of healing that was gonna happen at the time. And I remember there were people on the stage with all sort of ailments. And, he'd put his hand on them and he'd pray for them, and all of a sudden they're healed, and people would get up out of their chairs. And I remember back then I was skeptical. I was like, they were like, oh, the person got up out of the chair. And I was thinking, I didn't really see them get up out of the chair. So I was skeptical, and then they would tell me, oh, somebody was blind and they could see. And I remember being so skeptical about that guy, because I didn't see the evidence at the time, and as a kid, you wanted to be up close and personal to see it. And I just, it's kind of interesting how a child sees the world. And I remember years later, when I came to the United States, that a lot of those guys were exposed for making claims that they were healing people, and it was all fake.
Step right up, folks. Here's the answer to your problems. Dr. Utopia's sensational new discovery, ISM. ISM will cure any ailment of the body politic. It's terrific. It's tremendous. Once you swallow the contents of this bottle, you'll have the bountiful benefit of higher wages, shorter hours, and security. Enormous profits, no strikes. Remember, you're the big boss. Government control, no worry about votes. Name your own salary. Bigger crops, lower cost. Why, ISM even makes the weather perfect every day. And now then, because we are introducing this amazing item for the first time in this country, it isn't going to cost you 1 cent. All you have to do is sign this little scrap of paper, and you get your bottle absolutely free.
I hereby turn over to ISM Incorporated everything I have, including my freedom and the freedom of my children and my children's children, in return for which said ISM promises to take care of me forever.
And so that's the memory that I have of that timeline there in Jamaica. I just thought I'd share it with you. Thank you for listening to the podcast. As I said before in my last podcast, if you have a story you'd like to share, please write to me. And if it's interesting enough, I'll actually maybe read it on the air on my podcast for you. Please make sure it's brief. It's not very, very long, because I can't read a book on air. But if it's, a short story that you can share with me about your experience, I'd be happy to consider reading it. Take care, and thanks for watching.